here are 8 fundamental principles that you need to internalize if you want to get good at n8n. There are so many experts sharing their workflows and how they build them, but I noticed there was, and still is, a lack of resources to learn the mindset and basics of what is needed to allow me to be independent in building these workflows. Hi, my name is Han, and I've been helping clients automate parts of their business for the past 6 months now. And today, I want to share 8 fundamental principles across the pre-build, build, and post-build phase that will massively accelerate your learning curve in building high-quality AI automation workflows. There are 2 key fundamental principles in the pre-build phase. Number 1, use case first, workflow second. Remember, use case first, workflow second. We are not building automation workflows for the sake of it. We are ultimately trying to solve personal or business problems. If you have a use case in mind, chances are, if you have the 8 fundamental principles in place, you'll be able to build them. Too many times, people have a use case in mind, but they give up before they even start because they're intimidated by the complexity of the workflow. The workflow is supposed to be malleable and flexible. It can always be adjusted based on your capability, and you can always enhance it as you get better. And that is exactly where the learning happens, right? As you try to push the workflow's capability to meet your use case, that's where you improve. Number 2, don't reinvent the wheel. Here's the thing. You almost never start with a blank slate. Before you even start building, search on n8n, X, Reddit, YouTube for available templates. 99% of the time, I guarantee you will be able to find them. There are 2 main benefits I found when I first started doing this. Because I start from a base, I build my workflow faster, and I also get to study how people are building their workflow and discover different and new ways of doing things. For example, new nodes that I've never even realized that existed, or cheaper API that I could use. In fact, this approach has worked so well for me that I've built an entire automation just to monitor subreddits, so I don't miss out on highly upvoted posts sharing AI automation workflows. If you're interested in how I build it, feel free to check it out in the video description below. Now, with that out of the way, we start the building phase. There are 3 fundamental principles here that your future self will thank you. When I first started, it got overwhelming very quickly when you open up the node menu tab and there are so many node options there. Which one do I even use? Which leads us to rule number 3. Building n8n workflows is actually just retrieving data from somewhere, molding the data, and then getting your desired result, which is your output. In general, there are 2 ways in which data is retrieved: via your own database or publicly available datasets. Where people mainly struggle, the HTTP request node. What if I tell you that it is actually easy to use if you understood these 2 things? Number 1, use the curl command. You can usually find them in the API documentation. Be careful when you do this though, because this is where most people mess up. Don't just directly copy the curl into n8n. Instead, always test it first and make sure it works with your desired parameters. Learn how to use APIs with Postman. Postman is the one tool that n8n experts don't really publicly talk about because it is not the most exciting thing or flashy thing, but 99% of them actually uses it. Once you retrieve your data, you begin to mold them into your desired output. Here's where most people fumble. Because the truth is, the more nodes available to us in n8n, the more that we feel confused. But don't worry, because after months of building n8n automation workflows, here are the 6 nodes that you would actually be using 90% of the time. And we can group them up into 2 categories: the non-AI aspect and the AI aspect of any workflow. Very simply, the non-AI aspect is where you go through a process of cleaning up your data to be used for the next subsequent nodes. Let's take a dataset as an example. There are only 5 things that you will need to do to clean up any dataset. First, clean up and extract only the relevant columns that you need. In the world of data analytics, we call these columns as fields. Hence, for these, you would use the edit fields/set node. Next, you will find yourself needing to edit the data type of certain fields. For example, this created string presented as a number field. You can convert them by using the edit fields/set node as well. Usually, you can combine these 2 edit fields into a single node instead. I've done it separately here for the purpose of the demo. Third, filter rows that are invalid. For example, we don't want Reddit post body with null value, so we use the filter node to filter them out. Then, you may want to add additional columns or rows to the existing dataset. For that, we use the merge node. Here, we are creating a new column from the formatted datetime. Lastly, if all the above does not mold the data into the format that we want, we use the final boss code node. Here I have created 3 new columns using an advanced similarity detection algorithm, which cannot be done by any of the above nodes. Now, not knowing how to write codes is not a problem here, because after building close to 100 workflows, none of these code nodes I have written myself. And here's the trick. Open up Claude or ChatGPT, tell it what is the input that you have and what is the output format that you want to get out of it, and that will do the job for you. This single trick has got me very far in my early days, even now. And if you're just starting out, I'm pretty sure this will be sufficient for you. So now that we have covered 4 nodes, what you have is clean extracted data that looks like that. No unnecessary columns and no null values. So now you may be wondering, what are the other 2 nodes that you need to know of? And this is where the AI aspect of the automation workflow comes in, where you use an input, analyze it, and then produce an output. The input and output can exist in various formats: text, images, videos, or even voice. And 90% of the time, you'll be finding yourself using these 2 nodes, the AI agent node and the basic LLM chain node. I won't be covering the other formats in this video, but let me know in the comment section below if you're interested to learn more about those. Now here's the thing, even if you know all the above rules now, and you start building workflows like a machine, none of that matters if you don't understand this rule. Document your workflow. If you pay close attention to the workflows that creators tend to share, most of them name their nodes and have sticky notes that fences a group of nodes. That is not done for aesthetic reasons. In fact, it is actually the easiest and most beneficial thing that you can do for your workflow. Here's why. You're documenting for yourself and documenting for others as well. Imagine you browsing on X, finding a workflow, downloading it, and it looks like this. You'll be lost, confused, and chances are it ends up in the trash. Now compare that to this. You know exactly what it does, how it works, what you should do to run the workflow. Now this is important. Pause the video right now and compare this and the previous example. Have a think what differences it makes for yourself and your clients. It helps you learn and build way more efficiently, especially when you start to pick up your old workflows. Imagine coming back to this that you built a month ago and it was poorly documented. You would literally have no idea what is going on. The next thing you know, you start spending hours trying to understand why you did what you did. And besides, good documentation also makes you more money when you eventually start selling to clients. It reflects your professionalism to your clients, that you care, and you can build high quality and intuitive workflows. And I say this coming from a management consulting background because I know that what client perceive as high value is not necessarily what you perceive as high value. And so you want to make sure that you deliver polished and intuitive end-to-end workflows to your clients, especially if that's the only thing that they will see. Intuitive often means higher perceived value, which could result to more referrals or increasing the ceiling of price that you charge to your clients. The last fundamental in the build phase is one that most beginners tend to not be aware of. I wish I knew this earlier when I first started because it would have saved me so much time and money. Pin your nodes. Let's take an example. If you want to test only a single node within this workflow, you will need to execute all the preceding APIs and AI agent nodes. This costs money and time. Instead, execute them once, pin the node to save the output, then reuse the data to test subsequent nodes. Now, once you understand and apply all the above 5 fundamental principles, you should be able to build a workflow like this. This is a good start, but it is not enough to build a client-ready workflow. And this is where the fundamentals in the post-build phase will help us get there. The same way you want your house to be clean at all times, you want the same for your workflow. Which brings us to rule number 6, creating sub-workflows. I used to build workflows like this, but these days, it tends to look more like this. All the details are abstracted to these sub-workflow nodes. This keeps my main flow clean, modular, and way easier to maintain. Now you may be wondering, this is cool, and what? Will this help me learn faster, build better workflows? 100%. Because what you immediately get out of using these sub-workflow nodes is reusability. Think of it as creating pieces in a puzzle, except each piece can now be reused an infinite number of times. You can store these workflows as components and reuse them in future workflows. I find it helpful to store these in a component folder so you can access them easily. The second benefit is keeping the house clean. Having sub-workflows makes it very easy to debug and test your workflows in an isolated environment. When an error occurs in the main workflow, you can quickly identify in which sub-workflow it is occurring in, then zero in on that particular sub-workflow. What I usually do is pin a mock data to the starting node and then test exactly where the workflow is breaking. This way, you don't need to go back all the way to the start of the workflow and just resume from the last one you errored on instead. Now, as you build out these workflows and you start to activate and run them, it is inevitable that you run into errors. And this is where error logging is useful. When your workflow fails, you want to make sure that you are notified instantly. The best AI engineer don't only store failed executions, but they also keep a record of the successful ones as well. The purpose of error logging is to notify you what went wrong, where, and why. To do that, your error logging will need to comprehensively log the input, output, and other relevant context that takes place within the workflow. Here's the final nugget. Get into the habit early of tracking your LLM tokens and AI agent actions. This alone can make all the difference when you're selling projects to clients. Because the last thing that you want is your AI agent just taking random actions, calling random tools, and then racking up a huge bill for your clients. Now, I posted a video about this a few weeks back, and so if you're interested, make sure to check it out in the video description below, or you can also check it out in my channel, where I talk about how you can automate tracking LLM tokens and tracking AI agent actions. So, to summarize, before you start building workflows, always remember, use case first, workflow second. Be smart. Search existing templates for the use case, and then build on top of others. When you start building your workflow, build step by step. Remember that any workflow is basically extracting data from somewhere, molding them, and then getting your output. And while you do this, always remember to document your workflow. Name your nodes, put sticky notes around group of nodes indicating their function or use case. And then lastly, work efficiently. Pin your nodes. Save time, save money. Now, with these principles and with the help of AI, you will be able to build any workflow if applied correctly. Once you have a working n8n workflow, aim to modularize your workflow. Keep them simple, stupid. Use sub-workflows. And then log your errors. And then lastly, track your costs. There you have it, the 8 fundamentals to get good at n8n. If this video was helpful, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Feel free to also join my free school community where we are constantly learning and sharing our wins with each other. Thanks for watching. Peace.